Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I have something a little different for you. I'm back to look at 2 Point Hospital. If you guys know me, you know that I love to do playthroughs of various maps in 2 Point Hospitals. It is one of my favorite games. I think the developers did such a good job with it. But I think I've learned a couple of tricks over time. So today I'm here to give you 5 tips that I think will help you get a 3-star rating in any hospital. If you enjoy this video and you love 2 Point Hospital, then please make sure to give this video a like and subscribe to my channel for more videos. Okay, so time for tip number 1. My number 1 tip for 2 Point Hospital is to get patients in and out of your hospital as soon as possible. Now, why is this good? 2 main reasons. First of all, happy patients are paying patients. So patients, yes, you can keep them in the hospital with things like bathrooms and snacks and all that good stuff, but their happiness will decrease over time. The best way to keep them happy is to get them in and out of your hospital as soon as possible. And if they get to the treatment room while they are pretty happy, then they're gonna pay. And quite frankly, it doesn't matter if they're cured or not. It doesn't even matter if they die or not. They will still pay their bill as long as they're happy. The other thing that makes this really important is that patients who get through your hospital from diagnosis to treatment very quickly don't die before they get to treatment. Before I implemented this practice, yes, I was chasing a really high diagnosis percentage. But if they die before they get there because you took so long diagnosing them, doesn't matter. So worry about getting them to the end and out of your hospital as soon as possible first, and if you can streamline that, then you can focus on getting them diagnosed a little higher. Now sure, I make it sound easy, but how do you actually achieve that? Well, first of all, let's look at our settings. The first thing you'll notice in my settings is that I've set the diagnosis threshold for treatment to 50%. That seems really low, right? Quite frankly, in the beginning, I don't really focus too much on my cure rate, and certainly not on the cure rate once they get to the treatment room. Like I said, it's important for them to get to the treatment room alive and happy, and let's focus on that piece of it before we focus on the cure rate in the treatment room itself. The second thing I do is I fast track my treatment decision. Now, what patients will do is they will go to the GP's office. And after that, as long as they haven't met their diagnostic threshold, they will go to a diagnosis room and back to the GP's office. And they will go to the GP's office even if they've met that diagnosis threshold, unless you select fast track treatment decision. So again, this is going to get them in and out of your hospital as soon as possible. So make sure to check this. The last thing that you'll see in this hospital policy is that I've set the queue warning length to 3. Now I think the default is 6. First of all, quite frankly, if your queue length is 6, that's way too long. Sometimes they even set this as low as 1. You can see here, it's super easy to immediately see that, oh, I have a queue length of 3. Even if it's 4, even if it's 5, and you're comfortable with that, it's much easier to see in a glance how long your lines are getting if you set them nice and low so that you get that pop-up message. Now, there's another way that I use to get patients in and out as soon as possible, and that is my second tip, which is to have only one type of diagnosis room and have that room be the ward. Now, first of all, why do we want only one type of diagnosis room? Now, remember how I said that patients will go from the GP's office to the diagnosis room and then back to the GP's office? They will only go to each type of diagnosis room once. If you have 5 different types of diagnosis rooms and it's a hard disease to diagnose, then they'll go to all 5 and the GP's office in between. And quite frankly, if you're having them go to that many rooms, they're gonna be really unhappy and they're just gonna die before they ever get their treatment. So the easiest way to control the number of rooms that they go to is to only have one diagnosis room. That way, in the worst case, they will go from the GP's office to the ward, back to the GP's office, and that is it. If by that time they haven't met the diagnosis threshold, you will get a little letter. It says that we're only 46% sure. And quite frankly, that's good enough. So I'm just gonna set them to treatment. It actually doesn't come up too much, especially as you develop the skills of your staff. So I like only one diagnosis room. And now you may ask, why the ward of all rooms? Well, there's two reasons why I like the ward. The first reason is that it is staff efficient, and the other one is that it is space efficient. Now, you can see that in this single ward, I have 6 beds, and they can be staffed by just one nurse. But even better would be to put 2 nurses in there. And here's why. If you have 2 nurses and one of them needs a break, they're going to go on their break, but the remaining nurse can hold the fort down until a replacement nurse can be sent. That means that there's no delay ever in your patients getting diagnosed in this room. You also only have 2 staff, so you have less staff to train and less staff to pay. And especially at the early parts of the game, but quite frankly at the later parts as well, that's really gonna help. And you need ward nurses for your fracture ward anyway. I find it easier to manage my staff when I have less different types of staff. So I actually usually only have one set of nurses that specialize in ward and another set that specialize in treatment. And that's it. That specialization in treatment is going to further the ability to diagnose your patients quickly. Now, the second reason I mentioned is that the ward is very space efficient. So you can see a fairly small footprint for the ward here, and it manages to diagnose 6 patients at once. That's pretty space efficient. You can cram all your diagnosis rooms, which in my case is just the GP's office and the ward, in one building. That means that patients will have less of a walk between rooms, and again, that's going to lead to our goal of getting them in and out of your hospital as soon as possible. My third tip for you is to double your prices, but for treatment only. Treatment is really where the money's at. The treatment costs that you'll see are much higher than your diagnosis rooms, especially your GP's office. GP's offices charge something like $600. That's nothing. They're barely covering their costs. The money is in treatment. And remember what I said, if you can get them in and out as soon as possible, they're going to be happy when they get to your treatment room. And if they're happy, they're going to pay that price, no problem. The only bad thing about doubling your treatment price is that your price reputation is not going to be very good. But quite frankly, especially in the beginning, you're not going to have the infrastructure to handle a lot of patients. So if you have a really high reputation, then you're going to have way more patients than you can deal with, and that is going to result in long lines, patients who are unhappy, who might die before they get to treatment. It's just not good. So I would actually actively work on keeping your reputation down until you can establish enough GP's offices and enough trained staff to staff your hospital and handle that many patients. So don't worry about your reputation in the beginning and go ahead and double those treatment costs. At SOFA, I've mentioned money a couple of times. Money isn't everything, but look, right now my hospital has 7.5 million. That means that I can build more treatment rooms, I can upgrade my equipment, get more staff, invest in more training. All these things are in the end going to help your cure rate and going to help you get in more patients. In the long run, getting that money really helps you run your hospital more efficiently. My fourth tip is to build efficient rooms, not pretty rooms. Now, if you've ever started at a hospital where it came with pre-populated rooms, you'll see that they tend to be very large, very spacious, which may look nice, but they're not very efficient. So what do I mean by efficiency? First of all, they should be the minimum room size. You'll see that this GP's office is nice and small, and that allows me to put more GP's offices in a particular building, which again reduces the time that patients need to walk between rooms. That's true for staff as well. You'll see that this patient also has their chair nice and close to the door. So always pay attention to what route the patient is going to take and make sure it is as efficient as possible. In rooms that have a machine, you'll want to pay attention to how the patient and your staff interact with that machine. I'll take this one as an example. If you place it kind of close to the wall, you can see these feet that appear. Those feet represent where your patients and your staff interact with the machine. Unfortunately, they don't indicate which ones are the staff footprints and which are the patients, but it should be fairly obvious when you place down the machine. You can see that the footprints in the middle here relate to controls for the machine, so that's obviously where your staff will sit. And on the left hand side, you can see that that's where your patient will go in and out of the machine. Now in this case, there's actually one on the left and one on the right. So it's a little hard to place a door near where the patient will be because they will actually go in here and out of there. But in most of the machines, there's only one place where the patient interacts, so you want to place the door nice and close to where they need to go. Some rooms have special items that increase their ability to perform. In the case of the GP's offices, this medicine cabinet increased my diagnosis percentage by 1%. They're pretty expensive, I think they're $1,000. But in the case of diagnosis room, I really feel that that is worth it because the higher a diagnosis percentage you can get, again, the faster you can get your patients in and out of your hospital. In your GP's office, as you can see, I've stuffed it with as many medicine cabinets as I could. In the ward, I've put as many wall monitors as I could. In your training room, you can also use these posters, which are a very cost-effective way to train your staff more quickly. Now in this case, I would say it's actually not as important, but these posters are so cheap that why not? One more thing I'll mention is that particularly in treatment rooms, staff tend to be hanging around between patients quite a bit. A good room should have a chair, something for them to eat, and something for them to drink. That way it keeps staff morale up and they can use these items between patients. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it in the GP's office, they usually won't have time to use them, but I do also include them in the ward as well. And my fifth and final tip for you is to do all your research at Mitten University. Now this is one where, if you recall, it really specializes in research and training. So I set up a really efficient research area, and every time I need to do research on anything, instead of building up an entire research department, I just go here. Okay, as you can see here, I have a very efficient, very packed research area. They can research so fast. I can use it to really generate anything you want, but usually I will just reserve it for any time that you need to research any treatment rooms or anything like that. Upgrading treatment rooms. There are a ton of researchers. I've really kind of streamlined this area. Actually, they have 2 research rooms. That's what I built. And a ton of research desks. And my researchers have a lot of training. So it goes much faster here and it's much easier than setting up a research area in every hospital that you get. And that's all I have for you today. I hope that those 5 tips will help you in your own hospitals. Let me know if you found those tips helpful, and if you have any other tips that you find really helpful and you think it should be in my top 5, then make sure to leave a comment down below. If you found this video helpful, then please make sure to give it a like and subscribe to my channel for more tips and playthroughs of all the hospitals. If you're interested in seeing some of my gameplay or the hospital that I rehabbed with these 5 tips, then I'll leave some links down below so that you can check them out. Catch you next time. Bye.